This will share with our audience that Merrimack is an excellent place to live, work, and do business. So I'm going to turn it over at this time to our moderator. I've got State Rep Dick Hinch, who's the owner of Hinch Crowley Realty. Dick?
Good morning, and thank you, Deb, for that introduction. Welcome to you all. The way we're going to do this is, first I'm going to introduce the panel, and then after we do that, we will have the Pledge of Allegiance, and then I'll go through how the program is going to be progressing through the morning. So let's start off with Chief Mike Currier from the Fire Department, Tim Thompson, who is the Community Development Director, Steve Keach, who is the owner of Keach Nordstrom Associates, Bob Best, who is the chairman of our planning board, Fran L'Heureux, who is the chair of our zoning board of adjustment, and Mark Doyle, who's our police chief in town. Welcome to you, and thank you. If you could all rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay, so the way we're going to progress today is each one of the department heads and representatives who are here are going to give a 5-minute or so overview of their department and specifically how their department would interact with someone coming in to start a business. And it's not perhaps just limited to business. It may be someone in the audience who has a residential dwelling as well that may have a question specifically to one of them about how do I put a deck on if I'm encroaching in my neighbor's yard or something. But anyway, we'll see how that goes. So without further ado, and then after that, we're going to have questions from the audience. We encourage you to not be bashful, and it'll be very interactive, and you'll be able to ask the experts, so to speak. Okay? So, Chief Currier, good morning to you.
Good morning, and I'd like to welcome everybody here this morning for doing business in Merrimack. I think Merrimack is one of the best towns in the state, and I think that as you start doing business here within our community, you're going to see that the cooperation from everybody on this table is 100%. We work together very well. We communicate. I guess sometimes I think it's too much, but it's really not. Communications is a key to success in any organization, and we do that very well. My team works very well with everybody's teams that are here in this panel, and we are here to solve the problems. And again, one of the most important things that we're looking at here is to ensure that we serve our customer, and we want people to do business in Merrimack. That's number one. We want them here. We want them to be here. And on the fire department side, I want to ensure that they are here and doing things as safe as possible. Our mission in the fire department is to make sure that we protect life and property and the environment for all the citizens and people who visit or do business in Merrimack. That is our mission, and that's what we do. So we want to be positive about this and help everybody in any way we can to ensure that we can have their new business opened. We can ensure that we, if they want to have a strip mall and one company comes and goes, we do unit approvals for that and make sure all the parties that are involved are safe. Just a little review of the Merrimack Fire Department. It's different than most departments throughout the state. I want to thank our forefathers, our town council here, for having the foresight to look at alike organizations working together. At the Merrimack Fire Department, we have fire rescue reports under myself, and that's, again, any fire issues, rescue situations, motor vehicle accidents, and companies, we take care of that. We do all ambulance transfers from your site or the site of the emergency, be it industry or motor vehicle accident, to the hospitals. I have on staff either paramedics or advanced EMTs, so we transport and we provide that service at the advanced life support all the time and everything we have. So if you have a problem in Merrimack, you get the best care that you're going to have. We are the best there, okay? I'll say that. We are the best, okay? And I want to give one kudo to the guys on the floor here is that my paramedics are probably out of all the towns in the state, there's probably about 3 towns that have the ability to work at advanced level with CMC for cardiacs. We have the ability to actually prep the patient for surgery, for cardiac surgery, even before we get to the hospital. So we skip the emergency room. We go from ambulance, everything's sent over the air to the cardiac doctors. They know what's going on, and we administer all the medications, prep them for surgery. They go from our ambulance right into the cath lab. Okay, time is important here. One of the other things about Merrimack that I think our forefathers looked at, the town council, is that I have the fire marshal's office, which does all fire codes. I also, working on the fire department, is the building department, okay, which is very unusual in this state, but it works out very well for this community and business within the community. Also within the fire department is the health department. So taking those 3 entities and putting them together, when we have new businesses coming into town, we have people that want to expand, we have people that are thinking about coming into town, they come to our department, and we have the ability to take these 3 groups, put them in the same room with that contractor, from fire codes, building codes, health information, and when they walk out of our facility, our goal is to ensure that they have all the answers they could, and they do. They walk out of there positive, they know what to do, where to go, the next steps, what they can and cannot do, and anything that may have been a question or something that may have been a concern of theirs is answered when they leave. And I think that's very positive to anybody coming into Merrimack that wants to do business. So we are business positive in the department. We want to continue that way, and I have a great team that makes that happen.
Thank you, Chief. Appreciate that. Tim, good morning.
Morning, Dick. Good morning, everyone. Welcome again, and thank you for being here this morning. The Community Development Department is it's kind of a catch-all if you want to look at it from the big picture perspective. The responsibilities within my department range anywhere from planning and zoning and enforcement of zoning ordinances and regulations to the other part of my job in particular, which is economic development, business attraction, retention, and making sure that we have the right business quality and business environment here in Merrimack in order for businesses to survive, thrive, expand, and do well here. I have a staff of 2 professional planners underneath me and a couple of administrative support staff. We serve as staff to the Planning Board, the Zoning Board of Adjustment, the Conservation Commission, on occasion to the Heritage Commission, the Economic Development Citizens Advisory Committee. We assist with the Town Council. If there's a board or committee in town, there's probably something in there that we could be involved with in some way, shape, or form. So the Community Development Department really is one of the first places that if you're looking to do business in town, is probably one of the first places you want to stop. The way that my staff and I work is we will sit down with anybody who's interested in doing anything from home-based business in your garage all the way up to a multinational company that's looking to build the 100,000 square foot facility somewhere in town. Our mission is to treat everyone equally, fairly, and with the same level of professional service that everybody should expect and deserves here in the community. My staff and I will work with you. We want to help be that facilitator to get you through the process from day 1 to building permit to your certificate of occupancy and opening up your business. My staff and I are open and willing to meet with you pretty much anytime. We've got about 24 hours notice. We will work with you. We'll sit down, we'll game plan, we'll roadmap the process, whether or not it involves the planning board, the zoning board, or if it stays administrative. A lot of the things we're trying to do for some of the conversion projects and other smaller projects in town is, in order to try to get you from point A to point B a little bit quicker, is utilizing administrative approvals whenever we can to try to avoid the lengthy public hearing process that sometimes is involved with newer projects in town. And in the same token, we're working to try to shorten that process as well, to make sure we get you from where you are to where you want to be in the most expeditious fashion possible, but at the same time maintaining the high quality of life and the expectations that the community has for development in town. The town just recently, as of last year, actually beginning of this year, has adopted an updated master plan which sets out the vision for the community and where we want to see ourselves from a development perspective over the next 10 to 20 years. I'd certainly encourage any of you who are interested in Merrimack to take a look at that, where we are, where we want to be, and certainly hope that you want to be part of that future here in Merrimack. And again, thank you and welcome, and look forward to the question and answer as we go forward.
Thank you, Tim. Steve, good morning.
Good morning, Dick. Thank you, Deb, for hosting this event. I think will be a good thing, the outcome. For those of you who don't know me, I'm the member of the panel here that is a private business person. I'm not presently a town official, although I have been in the past. I'm a 30-year resident of Merrimack. I own a civil engineering, land planning, and land surveying business in Bedford, New Hampshire, but I'm a Merrimack resident. Over the years, we've had an opportunity to do an awful lot of work here in Merrimack. A lot of it has been advancing businesses, large and small, being the facilitator of the person who is hired to advance the project through the design and permitting process. I deal quite frequently with my colleagues here to my right, Mr. Thompson and Mr. Currier, and one of the themes that they put forward a few moments ago when they each spoke is their willingness and cooperation to proactively facilitate an outcome. Both departments do that in an excellent manner. When we bring in a prospective business person, my first stop is usually with Mr. Thompson, if my client hasn't been there already. Part of the development process when somebody's advancing a business or commencing a business or expanding a business or anything that involves commerce is time is money, and the goal is, whether we're talking about Merrimack or any other community, is a timely and predictable outcome. And working with the staff here for several decades now, the face has changed from time to time. Tim has been an excellent addition to the town staff because he gets it. Working with the staff here is a very good thing. Over the years, projects that we've helped advance have been large and small. I guess on the large end, I was one of the people who helped bring PC Connection here back in the late 90s. Smaller end, good success story, Advantage Benefits. If you remember the house, it was a single-family home at one time on DW Highway, kind of across from where Mr. G's Pizza is, Chris Wood's business. Chris was a longtime Merrimack resident, decided to move his business here from Bedford, where he had been for quite a number of years. Bought the property, did the necessary renovations to bring it to a commercial setting, and a couple of years ago, I believe, was the Merrimack Chamber of Commerce Business of the Year, if I'm not mistaken. Mm-hmm. So big or small, the attention that you're given here as business people really do help facilitate that timely and predictable outcome. But before you get here as a prospective business, what brings you here? There's been a common theme to various clients that I've worked for over the last 3 decades. And it all comes back to that first macroeconomics class that we took in college, doesn't it? The factors of production, land, labor, and capital. Land, in terms of non-residential land, Merrimack is, and part of it, I guess, is because of the Berlin Wall that we have called the F.E. Everett Turnpike, right? The land to the east is generally non-residential, and with a few exceptions, and the land to the west is residential. It creates a nice compartmentalization of uses, far better than any zoning ordinance could possibly do. But nevertheless, the land side. Now, historically, the town has grown from the center to the north and the south, and to some extent, it's still doing it. There is still non-residential land there that is ripe for development. How long it remains, who knows? The trend that I'd like to see continue is redevelopment back towards the center. We have a town center committee here that has been very proactive in really doing some infrastructure-related things, amenity things. Watson Park. Right now, they're a simple trail that will connect Watson Park to the 40 acres on the other side of the Turnpike. Brandenburg Gate, I guess. But the land part is important. And the land here, and I guess this is part of capital, is the public capital, the infrastructure. We have great access. We have utilities throughout all of our non-residential district. Adequate utilities. Plenty of capacity at the wastewater treatment facility. Merrimack Village Water District and Pennachuck Water Works keep us supplied with water, almost an endless supply of water. And all the other utilities, gas, adequate communications, adequate electrical resources to sustain businesses small and large. That's huge. I work in other communities where towns, because of tax base implications, are trying to advance non-residential development, and it's tough because of the lack of utilities. We have those here. In terms of the labor, we're a town of 27,000 people, Tim, roughly. Well-educated people, for the most part, except for me, I guess. But if you are pretty much any type of business, you can find the right people to work for you without having to go into a huge job search. You will have qualified people walk into your business and want to work for you. That's huge. Housing is important. You know, you pay your employees what you pay your employees based on their job description. Part of what they have to make is their cost of life. We have a very wide range of housing opportunities here, ranging from single-family homes that can be purchased, existing stock at a very reasonable price for those people, and rental. Single workers can find places to live on a rental basis that they can afford, and that's huge. We've had in New Hampshire the Workforce Housing Initiative over the recent years, and Merrimack is one of the few communities of its size that can honestly say we really don't need to do anything changing our zoning to comply with those requirements, because that is already here. I'd like to see more of it. And obviously, on the capital side, the ability to obtain finance. We have in our region, not just in Merrimack, but in our region, we have some very capable and well-funded lending opportunities, obviously, both in the private and public sectors to fund expansion and growth. Continuing, moving forward, we've done here in Merrimack, and longer than I've lived here 30 years now. You drive up and down the corridor, you see the businesses that are here, large, small, industry. There was a time when they weren't here, and really it's over the last 40 or so years that has occurred, and that's huge because that's our tax base. That's also where people work. That needs to be kept sustainable over time, and moving forward, that is a challenge that any municipality in the state, in my opinion, is going to have. That is our tax base. We need to support it. As residents, we need to do business with those in our own community. Over time, as things move forward, there's been a change in demographic, not just here, but across the population. Younger people today, first of all, there's fewer of them. People aren't having as many kids, obviously. we don't want to, in my opinion, put Merrimack in a position moving forward where we export our best and brightest because they don't want to be here anymore. Okay, that happens, folks. I grew up in St. Johnsbury, Vermont. That happened there. Okay, the people that there was nothing there for people my age. That's why I live in Merrimack now, right? Okay, I've had kids that have gone through the high school here. One's in college. One has graduated. I see what happens to them and their cohorts. I'm interested to see, as time moves on, how many stay and how many find opportunities elsewhere. We've become a very mobile society, and I think it's going to be important for us here in Merrimack to be sustainable, to find a way to keep our best and brightest here. And that is how to work, in my opinion, involves where you live, where you work, and where you play. We're in a competition, in essence, for the businesses now that every municipality in the state is trying to foster quality growth and for tax-based purposes and for social purposes. When we have an opportunity to say to a client or somebody who we run into at an event contemplating a business, why not do it in Merrimack? Why not? Everything is here. But moving forward, I'd like to see business expand. I'd like to see, through the corridor here, redevelopment. It comes back to that live, work, play thing. There needs to be culture to help move that forward, to retain and to remain sustainable. As you travel around New England, I guess you have to ask, how do you do that? That's nice to say, Steve, but how do you do that? The younger people today, the people that are graduating from college, want that third place in their life. You know, not where they live and where they work or go to school or whatever they do, but where they are in between. Whether it be a health club or whether it be sipping a beer down at Abel Ebenezer. But as we move forward, I'd like to see the redevelopment opportunity here in the downtown expand to create a true downtown and take advantage of that. And I think that the right things are in place for that to happen. Kind of to finish up here, we have one secret weapon here in town that no other town has when we're competing for business. Her name's Deb. So thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Appreciate it. Bob, good morning.
Good morning, Dick. Thank you, and thank you, Deb, for inviting me to be here. I am certainly glad to be here. I love the thing doing business in Merrimack, and I think that Merrimack is open for business. It's a great opportunity to promote the things that we do, and we're certainly proud of the work that we've done so far. What I want to talk about, I'm the chairman of the planning board. I've lived in Merrimack for about 15 years, and probably about 5 or so I've been on the planning board, and then more recently as the chairman of it. And there's several things that I want you to know about how the planning board works and how Merrimack works. The first is, as a priority as the chairman of the planning board, is I want to make sure that the process that we put forward is good government. It's efficient, it's effective, it's service-oriented, it's as efficient and timely as it can be. But more important than that, and it kind of hits on a theme that Steve touched on in terms of predictable results, the process needs to be fair. We shouldn't have, this is where we hold our planning board meetings. I sit in this chair, we have applicants sit at this table right here. An applicant shouldn't sit down at that table having no idea what's going to happen. They shouldn't sit down at that chair and have no idea what are the criteria I've got to meet to get this board to approve it. And we've got to set up that process where people know what is it that I've got to do, what's expected of me, and then they can sit down knowing that they've achieved those things, and then we're going to have a presentation and a public hearing. But the result really ought to be pretty well in hand because you know what the criteria were, you know what you've done to meet them, and you can achieve that. That's good, fair government. In my daytime job, I'm an attorney, and more often than not as an attorney, I'm on the other side of a judicial bench or a hearings process like that. And when you go in and you have no idea what's going to happen? When you're just really rolling the dice because there's no criteria, there's no expectations, it's all personality driven, that's not fair and it's not right and it's not the way we want to do government. And so my focus as the chair of the planning board, and I think Tim's focus and some of the others in town, is to make sure that that's not what you get from Merrimack, that you can figure out what it is that we've got to do. The other thing that I want to tell you about the planning board is the two major things that the planning board does. It's got a few other kind of projects that it does, but the two major things that it does on a day-to-day basis is it reviews commercial site plans and subdivisions of land. So if you want to subdivide land for either commercial or residential uses, you got to come forward to the planning board and explain your project and meet some criteria, and the planning board sits here, the staff works with you to kind of explain what's required. And then the planning board kind of goes through it. Same thing with a commercial site plan. If you want to build a building in the commercial zone or industrial zone, you've got to come and present your site plan, and it's got to show where your building's going to be and how the traffic's going to be managed and how drainage is going to be managed and lighting and a whole bunch of other criteria. And the planning board will work you through that process. And that's sort of the predictable process that I was talking about before. We want that to be something you understand. And the planning board does those. There's usually 2 or 3 applicants on a meeting twice a month, so probably 5 or 6 opportunities a month for folks will come forward with a plan for approval. And we do our best to be fair and objective for that. And more often than not, the same night that you come for the introduction of it is where you get your final vote, and so you're completely through the process. Sometimes there's more complicated projects that take a little bit more follow-up and more research, and that's sort of one of the things that the planning board does, these site plan and subdivision approvals and reviews. And the reason that you want to do all of those things is all of the folks who have already decided to put down roots in Merrimack have expectations for what they want the neighborhood to look like. They chose it because of the way that it looks and the way the neighbors are, and you want to make sure that things fit with that established neighborhood that's existing in town for the benefit of the people who are already here. The biggest thing that I want to talk about that the planning board does, and I want to finish with this because it kind of touches on some of the things that Steve talked about. Hardly anybody notices this, but the master plan for the town, master planning process, it's a planning board. It plans things. Day-to-day review of applications doesn't look like planning, but every 10 years, towns in New Hampshire develop a master plan. And that's where the planning board sits down and we think about things like we want to have some businesses. Well, what do businesses want? Businesses want customers. They want access. They want utilities, as Steve mentioned. They want good quality employees. They want the other infrastructure that they need, whether it's other businesses that they need to work with. Highway access, and although we sort of inherit highway access, we don't really go out and make that happen. All of the other things that you talk about that Steve said that are important to him as a business person are created by planning. You figure out where do the businesses belong, what should they look like, what kind of infrastructure do we need, what kind of utilities, what kind of parks, what kind of emergency access do we need, what kind of fire and police and all of that should we develop, what kind of water infrastructure, how should we treat the rivers. All of those things come together in a master plan document. And that, to me, is the biggest role for a planning board and the most important one for business, because that first role that I talked about where you come for your site plan or your subdivision approval, we want that to be as efficient and effective as possible. But at some point early on in your business role in Merrimack, that's in your rearview mirror. That doesn't matter to you anymore. You've gotten that behind you. And as quickly as we can and as efficiently as we can. And after that, what matters is, do I have customers? Do I have employees? Is this the place I want to have my business? What does it look like? What's the traffic look like? What's the infrastructure that's going to help me? And all of those things that go to making your business actually succeed. Getting through the planning and zoning process, the land use process, is just it's the first few months of existence for your business. And then after that are all the important things. How do I succeed? How do I profit? How do I make money? And that's where a planning process comes in. It's not all driven by business, because obviously residential and what are the schools and what's the life like for people who live here. But on the other side of the coin, that's what brings the customers and the employees that businesses want. So all of those things have to be pulled together into a common plan. That's what I think is the most important thing that the planning board does. And hopefully we're doing, as best we can, a good job of it. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Bob. Fran, good morning to you.
Good morning, Representative Hinch. I'm Fran L'Heureux. I'm chairman of the Zoning Board of Adjustment. And I think I'm going to go about this a little bit differently. I want to tell you what I've seen in Merrimack. We've been here just shy of 44 years, and I think I've got age on all of you right now. And we live on Back River Road. And Back River Road was a dirt road when we moved in. It was a secondary road in Merrimack at the time. And we just loved it. It was woods, and we were the first people to move in on Back River. And we've been here, just as I said, just shy of 44 years. We've raised our children here. They've married. They've moved away, and it's just my husband and myself. And if Merrimack wasn't such a good town, we wouldn't be here. And one of the things I enjoy is volunteering for the town. I've been on the zoning board for approximately 7 or 8 years, and this is my second term as chairman. The zoning board tries to help out as much as possible for what people are coming to us for. As Dick said, maybe they want to put a porch onto their house, which needs a 40-foot line from the border, the encroachment of the other people's property, and they've only got 5 or 10 feet. We try and help them out. We go to every petitioner, we go to their site and we walk it, and if they're home, we talk to the homeowners. If they want to add on a small addition onto their house, their parents are sick, they want to take care of their parents, we do everything we can to see that they get what they want. Businesses, we try and help them as much as possible. I don't know if you agree, but the old Silas location, it has been fixed up and it looks a lot better than it did a couple of years ago. And at least it's being used at this time. Community development, Tim Thompson and his personnel help us out 100%. Anything we need from them, they're there for us. So a lot of people come in front of the zoning board and they think we're, what's the term, monsters, or we're going to give them a hard time. But we don't. We try and get them through the process and help them work out to get what they want. And that's about it, but I do have 2 other things to say. For Chief Currier, you're doggone right. You do have the best fire department in the state, in New England, in the world. I was transported in June, and I could not have asked for better care. And Chief Doyle, we went on vacation. Within the hour, one of the officers was checking the house. We didn't lock our back door, but within the hour, our door was locked. So we have a doggone good police department, too, best in the world. Couldn't ask for more. Thank you.
Thank you, Fran. Good morning, Chief Doyle. How are you today?
I'm well, Dick. Thank you for having me this morning. Deb, thank you very much for the invite, and welcome everyone to this morning's Doing Business in Merrimack Symposium. I'm really honored to be here, and especially in the company that I'm with this morning, to talk a little bit about the opportunities that exist for folks that either want to move into Merrimack or conduct business in Merrimack. The police department, just to give you a quick snapshot, is made up of roughly 53 individuals who work very closely together to make sure that the level of service and the quality of the service that the folks in the community receive from us is nothing less than exceptional. We have patrol officers, criminal investigators, we have administrative services officers, community services officers, and public safety dispatchers, all of which are geared to providing only the highest level and quality of service that folks in this town and business owners in this town should not only expect, but should also be very accustomed to. Our mission, which is to protect life and property, maintain order within the community, and assist the public at large in a manner that's consistent with the rights and dignity of all persons as provided for by the constitutions of the United States and the state of New Hampshire, is so deeply rooted in our mantra, which is commitment to excellence and service to the community, which is an offshoot of our entire community policing philosophy. Now, when I talk about community policing, I don't talk about just that as a catchphrase. We don't have a community policing department or a division. That thing, that concept, that philosophy, that belief system is rooted in every single employee in our department, from the patrol officer that some of you may have the fortunate occurrence or instance to run into during the course of our day under not so pleasant circumstances, to those that do go to conduct a house check, that do reach out to our residents because they found an issue or a concern that they may have. We strive to make sure that that level and quality of service is nothing less than exceptional. We follow the golden rule, and we tell all of our officers when they're hired that you treat other persons as if you were going to treat them just like your mom. It's very much that way. It's really that simply defined. And when we find out that that is the mantra that they follow, that that's the philosophy and the belief system that they take and they undertake themselves, that we get so much good feedback from the folks that we actually serve. And that's not just the residents in town, and it's not necessarily just the business owners in town or those that are coming to town to work. Those are visitors. We have upwards of over 1 million folks that come to visit our premium outlets every single year. And those are individuals that have contacts with our police department and other members of the public safety and government, for that matter, that need our services at any given point in time. We want to make sure that when they have a connection or they have a contact with us, that they've formed a connection with us as well. So we try to create that atmosphere of success and an atmosphere of opportunity. We offer a number of services outside of the law enforcement side of services that we provide folks, but we offer a number of services and programs within the police department that folks can take advantage of. House checks, residential site surveys, security surveys for businesses, crime prevention through environmental design. All kinds of different programs that we provide in a book and that are on our website that allow folks to do a little research to find out how it is that we can help you as a business owner, a visitor, or a resident succeed and bring up your family or provide an opportunity for your employees to come to Merrimack and work or visit and do so in a safe and nurturing environment. Like I said, the services and programs that we offer are also so deeply rooted in our community policing philosophy that every time that you have a contact with our officers, you've made a connection or formed that partnership. And when I talk about partnerships, it's not just giving somebody a phone call once a month to say, hey, how are things going, or send them a Christmas card during the Christmas holiday season to say, hey, we're thinking about you. These are ongoing, regular partnerships that we've not only started and created, but things that we reinforce continually over the course of time. Partnerships that not only exist with our residents, but with civic groups, with schools, with businesses, with the other department heads that you see sitting around the table tonight or this morning, and with other folks that may come to town that are exploring other opportunities. And these partnerships are things that we continue to reinforce and build upon. With the schools, with the businesses, there are many services that we can offer those individuals that we wouldn't have otherwise thought of unless they brought them to our attention first. And like I said, when we talk about trying to create that culture of success, we want to make sure that you folks that are coming to town, that are looking for an opportunity, know that we're listening. And it's not just the police department. I think you've heard it from everybody else that's on the panel this morning. We're listening to what it is that you need. If you have a need that you don't think is being addressed, you need to reach out to us to make sure that we're doing all that we can to let you know that we're here to help. Our web resources are things that we've tried to institute that we felt folks in town need to access right away. And we've tried to leverage technology in such a way that we're getting the message out of all the things that we have been doing, that we are currently doing, and that we're considering doing in the future. We've done such a good job at leveraging those resources that we have a very multifaceted and huge social media presence, so we can try to take advantage of the social media that's out there to get the message out for all the things that we do. And not only for just the police department, but we work closely with some of the other members of the town government, including the fire department, Department of Public Works, and community development to, I guess, build upon the things that they're doing as well. So when I say that we've done all that we can, it's not that we've done all that we can. Doing all that we can includes looking forward and moving forward and all that we can do more. And I think that's why we've been named the 19th safest community in the country, as well as the safest community in the state of New Hampshire. And I'm very proud of all of the officers, the employees, the public safety dispatchers, and the support people that we have at the police department that do that every single day, 24/7, 365 days a year. You should feel proud of your police department when you come to Merrimack to live, to grow, to raise a family, or to conduct business. And I know I'm very proud of him. Dick, thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Mark. We appreciate that. So now the next phase of this discussion this morning is going to be questions from the audience. But I'll start with one while you're trying to figure out when to come up here and ask. Scenario: I'm a broker, real estate broker, and I have a customer that wants to start a business in an area that is currently mixed use, and at one time there was both a business there and residential dwellings. So, Tim, if you will, if I was to professionally advise my customer the steps that he or she has to go through to bring that business into that particular location, can you give us an idea of how that process would unfold?
Certainly. Hopefully that first would start out with direct contact with either myself or one of my staff to go through, what was on the property, what's proposed to be on the property, and then look at what the existing zoning is and what's permitted within that zone. Situation like the one you're describing, I'm quite familiar with, actually, as we've talked about it in the past. There's some particular rules in our ordinances and regulations that once a non-residential or a use that was permitted on a site that no longer is permitted by the zoning in that particular location. For example, many of the existing residential units along Daniel Webster Highway were located there long before we had commercial or industrial zoning in the community. And there's a recognition under both New Hampshire law and the town zoning ordinance that says, as long as you were there prior to zoning, you're allowed to continue that particular use on the property. So your residential use in a commercial or an industrially zoned property, as long as you continue to use it residentially, we consider you to be in compliance with the local rules and regulations. However, once that use is abandoned for more than a year, that protection is gone. So that's the type of conversation that if we talk up front, we can advise you to say, look, that residential use is no longer permitted on this particular property because it's been abandoned for more than a year. Your first step now needs to be going to see Fran and the folks on the zoning board to get a special exception in that particular zone that would allow you to reestablish that residential use. And in terms of the non-residential use, be it a retail or a commercial office type of facility, what we would do is we'd look at what was previously approved on the property. If we have a plan that says this was a retail operation and what you're proposing is a retail operation, I'm going to say, you don't need to see me, you don't need to go see Bob at the planning board. I can let Chief Currier and his folks at the building department know this is not a change of use, it's the same as what was already approved. You just need to go verify that you meet their requirements in terms of the occupancy of the unit. If it's something different, that's when the decision has to be made as to how significant the changes are from what was originally approved. If it's something minor that you don't need to change anything on the site, it still complies with parking, I'm going to make a determination that this is, again, something that Bob and the folks in the planning board don't necessarily need to see because it's similar enough that I can approve that administratively and, again, then send you to see Chief and his folks. If it is significant and there are changes that need to be made, that's when I'm going to refer you to say, look, you might want to hire somebody like Steve or another engineering or surveying firm so that they can help you go through the processes to what you're going to need to prepare for a site plan to make that project happen in front of the planning board. So that's really my role and my staff's role, is to give you that game plan and walk you step by step. These are the steps you're going to need to take in order to get to where you want to be.
So to follow up on that, if one was to move forward with this process, they met with you, would they next go to Chief Currier's department to find out now what the new building code regulations are before they went to the ZBA and saw Fran?
What I recommend anybody do is that, as Chief said earlier, we're always talking and we're always communicating. I want to get everybody to the table up front before you spend any money on an engineer or doing any building plans to say, let's get everybody in the room that's going to have responsibility on this, and let's all tell you what you're going to need to do so that you know before you go and make that investment decision into putting your project together, what's going to need to happen for you to get from point A to point B.
Good.
Dick, may I add a little bit to that?
You may. Thank you.
From the planning board standpoint, if your project is a significant change of use or it's a new development, this investment in engineering can be expensive, and sometimes it's necessary for what the planning board needs to see and review, but a lot of times it isn't necessary. And the planning board has the ability to do something called waiving full site plan review. So if it's a modest change or a minor difference, instead of spending the money to do a full engineering with all of the details and all of the infrastructure on a site where we already know where that stuff is because it's already been installed a long time ago, you can ask the planning board for a much more abbreviated process. Tim's staff guides applicants into doing that when it's appropriate and feasible for them to do it. And so just because you have to come to the planning board doesn't mean that you've jumped off of that big cliff into huge expenses.
And before you even get to the actual site plan, the formal site plan process, we have a pre-application process for a conceptual review where you can come in without any plans and just explain to the folks on the planning board, this is what I want to do. You know, what am I going to have to do in order to satisfy you? Am I going to need to go and hire the engineer and surveyor? Or can I take a plan that was previously done and do a few markups? And that's really where that conversation and back and forth, again, prior to making that formal application, that the planning board is always very willing to have that conversation with you and really help to set forth what the process needs to be from that point.
Thank you.
And Dick, also, I just want to highlight on that one more time, too, when we start looking at the code enforcement and the fire marshal side, is that we meet with people very often and review codes that they may have to comply to, what they're looking at, what their future plans could be, and then they can figure out what that cost is going to be if they have to do some upgrades. One of the most important things that we've done in the last year is we put frequently asked questions on the website. Website's very important. If you go to the fire department website on the building side, and all the questions that have come up in the past that we consider very important or that would be relative to somebody else, that website for frequently asked questions for commercial and residential is updated weekly. So if somebody comes in, has a concern, we say, well, that somebody else could have that same question. It goes out on the website. So that is an excellent place to start looking.
Great. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, let's see how many bashful people we have in the audience. I see one with a hand up. Would you like to come up and ask your question?
Yes,
Or,
my name is Albert Jernigan. I'm with the 90.7 FM Drive Live show. I want to commend the city of Merrimack for their 19th safest city in the state. Oh, thank you. Could be a two-part question. So you guys are all community focused. So how are you getting that message and how are you getting your message out there to other people outside of Merrimack that Merrimack is a good place to go? It's a good place to keep the young kids from staying. And so I guess just how are you doing it? And then and who are you targeting now to try to get to come to Merrimack now? Thank you.
Tim.
It's a fantastic question and something that I think we as a community need to continue to improve upon. One of the first things that I did upon taking over in the Community Development Department a little more than 3 years ago was to establish a social media presence, to start putting things out on Twitter, advancing the things that I think are important for the community to know and hear about. My strategy, at least initially, has been to try to focus on media partners, newspaper reporters, radio, TV, and try to get those people to follow the Community Development Twitter feed. It's been relatively successful to this point, but it's still something that I'm working on and struggling a little bit with in terms of how to widen my reach beyond those that I think I've already know and are familiar with Merrimack's message. Another key component of that from my perspective and something that has been on my radar for quite some time is to improve our presence on the internet from an economic development perspective particularly, so that people can get the information that they need to make those site selection, those home ownership decisions easier than we are given the constrained fashion that we have with the town's current website infrastructure. Thankfully, in the last budget, the community did approve some funding, and we're now in the beginning stages of working on that upgrade to not only my department's website, but the website for the entire community in general. And I think that's a really important step, is trying to get those, at least the social media and the internet part of things modernized and geared towards the audience that we currently are not reaching. And that's something I think that I certainly see as one of the challenges that we have as a community moving forward, and something that I'm committed to continue working on.
Thank you.
Can I add a little bit to that as well?
Sure.
I hope I'm not
No, go
offering
ahead.
a caption for the obvious here, but Deb and this program and the work of the Chamber is part of how you get that message out, and it's an effort in that regard. And obviously, we're all here today talking about doing business in Merrimack, so it's exactly one of those outreach opportunities that you have. But thankfully, we have such a great Chamber that really does a good job of helping us with those things.
Good. Thanks, Bob. Another question? All these bashful people. Right.
I better put this back on here because I'll drop it. Hi, my name is Bill Behrens. I'm a resident here for 29 years. I'm trying to catch up to Fran to 44, but I don't know if I'll make it or not. I'm here as a citizen volunteer, private citizen in town. Been involved with the Merrimack Police Department for the last 16 years as a crime line volunteer. And the crime line is basically a all-volunteer group that helps the police department with their programs that they have here in town. And Chief alluded to earlier that we're the 19th safest community in the United States, which is saying a lot because this is done by a research company out of New York called the Neighborhood Scout. They're similar to a Pew Research organization, and it's for communities of 25,000 or more. Last year, I think we were in the 30s. This year, we moved up to the 19th safest community, which is saying a lot because I believe, as Robert alluded to earlier, people want to know what their communities are like that they're living here and what the neighborhoods are going to be like. We have presently 60 streets in town that has a sign marked on there saying this is a neighborhood watch community, this is a neighborhood watch street. And I've worked closely with the community services officer in the department there, Officer Kelleher, and we go out and do demonstrations and also talk to groups of people, as many as, we had a meeting one evening in a home of 8 people. We had another meeting of 120 people out on a soccer field with about 15 dogs to demonstrate what a community service program could help with their neighborhood watch program. Basically, it's an email tree. There's 1 or 2 street captains that basically communicate with the rest of the people in their group. They're all watching out for one another because the police officers can't always be at every place at the same time. And basically, we were doing a little bit of a placard research for businesses in town, trying to let people know that those folks that do come in from outside of the state know that this is a neighborhood watch community, and that you never know, somebody is watching. And it may be with the old saying, see something, say something. A lot of people have referred that and called into the dispatch office. Something just doesn't look right here, you know. And basically, we've got 22 people that are involved with our group, and I think that our help has made this community a lot safer, and I just wanted to, reinforce what they're doing there to make sure that, as a citizen volunteer, we have a lot of good groups in the town, and they have a lot of great programs that the police department runs here. Not to take anything away from the rest of the group, but, I've worked closely enough with Chief Doyle's group there that what he was saying earlier about you come in contact with a police officer, you're going to get all the respect in the world, and you're not going to be belittled or anything like that. Anything that they can do for you, they will. So that's my 2 cents for the discussion here this morning. And if you have any ideas of relocating to Merrimack, it's a great place, and it's a good place to do business in. Like I said, I came in '85. Thought I was only going to be here 10 years, but here it is. I'm here 29, so it's a nice place to work. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Bill. Okay, all right.
Dick, could I just build on that just real
Absolutely.
quickly, without taking up too much time with the rest of the panel? Is that Bill brings up just a couple of good points, and I just want to reiterate a couple of the concepts that he spoke about. Really was the partnership piece that we've tried to create, that we're going to continue to sustain, and I think it boils down to really it takes a community to build a community. So we're not all in this together, and the police department doesn't look at problems as trying to arrest our way out of them or enforce our way out of them. Instead, we look at opportunities to bring other stakeholders together to get into that problem-solving mode. What is it that we can collectively do? Neighborhood Watch is just a small piece of that puzzle. Our volunteer program is just a small piece of that puzzle. But when you look at all of the small pieces individually, they don't make a whole lot of sense until you bring them all together. And this is part of it, too. It's not just the police department working with those stakeholders. It's bringing them in and then working with other members of government, if you will, or private enterprise to solve problems. And we have partnerships across the board, not only with those other governmental agencies or with the stakeholders, the residents, but with business, with schools, with everyone that comes to town. And we're proud of that. And that, I think, is a secret to the Merrimack community's success.
Thank you, Mark. Tim.
I just wanted to put a couple other people, just following up on the question we had earlier, just to put a couple other people on the spot here in the audience in relation to that question as to how we spread the word. And as you all know, New Hampshire is still a pretty small state, and a lot of people know each other, whether they're in Merrimack or outside of Merrimack, in the region or the state in general. And I was just hoping that Steve, as an engineer whose company does businesses in communities across the state, could give us an example of how he's sharing that story with other potential clients that are coming to talk to him about places to work. And we also have Carl Soderberg from Abel Ebenezer Brewing Company here today, who was one of Steve's clients, as to why they particularly chose Merrimack as their place to do business.
Thank you, Tim. Steve, that's your cue.
Oh, geez, I had to wake up now. Right? Thanks, Tim. So much in New Hampshire is done word of mouth and through relationships. Sitting here, looking out in the audience, I see Dan Scanlon from Colliers International, one of the commercial brokers that I've worked with for years. When he has a client, or other brokers have clients, and they're looking for a site, well, being a local guy, I might be the person who gets the phone call. I have got a potential user for a 10,000 square foot facility that makes widgets. Do you know of such a place that? So I usually start my mental scan of potential sites with stuff in my own town. Right? But I'm not the only one who does that. So much of that occurs that way in the state. So when you talk about direct marketing, a lot of it is by people that those of us in the room. Doesn't involve a website. It doesn't involve Twitter. It doesn't, or social media. It doesn't necessarily involve anything formal. It's a good old-fashioned handshake way of doing business and helping people connect dots. Other communities that Tim alluded to, I'm sure the same is alive and well. I know it is in a couple of real local communities here, not very far from us. And but oftentimes over the years, I'm not a real estate broker, but man, if I could get a commission on some of the deals that I help put together, it would be be a lot of money. But don't underestimate that, particularly, as Tim said, in the small state, because there's a group of us involved in real estate, involved in design services, involved in the legal profession. And pretty much every time somebody goes to do anything of any significance, you're going to touch all of us. And we kind of work together in our little networks, and we help people move things along. And right, Dick?
Absolutely.
Okay. So, does that help?
Yes. Thank you.
Carl.
Your name was used. Good morning.
I guess I'll start by. I'm not from the town of Merrimack. I'm actually not even from the state of New Hampshire. I've lived in New Hampshire for about 3 years. I currently reside out in the town of Auburn. And I was commuting to Cambridge working at a biotech company when we started writing a business plan for a brewery in southern New Hampshire. We did talk to 6 different towns. We weren't loyal to any town. The reason why we ended up in Merrimack, we were looking for 2 key things. First was a business-friendly town, because not all towns are business-friendly, and one that was also brewery-friendly. It was kind of seeking the path of least resistance to take our business plan from concept and actually realizing it, which we did back in June. Some towns, I'll know of at least 4, and you guys kind of touched on it, getting everyone to the table up front, meeting within 24 hours, the ability to answer any questions. It really goes a long way, because when you're a small business owner, you're a subject matter expert at what you do. I know nothing about building codes or ordinances, or I didn't even know what a planning and zoning board did. I've never worked in small government before. So a lot of towns will just give you a book and tell you, go hire a site planner and don't come back until you have a site planner. So it's nice to, I learned a lot throughout this entire process, but part of that learning was the ability of all these fine people willing to sit down with us and go over every detail of everything we had to do from start to finish. And having that roadmap makes it a lot easier from a planning phase. What things are we going to be spending our money on? And I have dealt with everybody up here except for Chief, although I do active business with your team. And Steve, obviously. But no, it's been a great experience. It continues to be. I know that in the future, as we grow, there are going to be changes that we have to make to the facility. And having that rapport with Chief Currier's team and with Tim's team, it goes a long way having a town that's willing to make the effort and sit down and I guess work face to face with you. And obviously, it really helps too to have a Chamber of Commerce that backs you at 110%. They planned our grand opening, and it was a big hit. So I highly recommend Merrimack. Part of what I do now, and I'm active, kind of returning the favor. I'm very active with the Chamber of Commerce. I try to be as active in the town as I can. And our business plan going forward, part of it includes trying to reach out to other businesses and attract them here. Being in the entertainment industry, it's really my focus is trying to show other entrepreneurs who have creative business ideas that this is a place where they can set up. If we keep having people come here and spend their money here, eventually it'll find its way to our brewery and to all the other businesses around here and back to the town. It's a mutually beneficial growth, and anything I can do to help try and attract other entrepreneurs, whether it's in-state or out-of-state. I think New Hampshire is a great place to do business, and Merrimack's the best place in New Hampshire to do it. Thank you very much.
Carl, thank you so much. Dan, good morning.
I guess when your name gets mentioned, you're required to come to the podium and say a few words here. I'm Dan Scanlon. I'm with Colliers up in Manchester. I'm a commercial real estate broker. And so as an outsider, I can attest that doing business with Merrimack is a very good positive experience. My dealings have primarily been with Tim, and the process that Tim has in the planning department is really great for outside businesses. So Merrimack is a cool town. You have an industrial park, you have an office park, you have lots of retail, you have a strong residential component. The mantra that I use all the time is that because change is inevitable, towns need to be as flexible as they possibly can be to accommodate change. It's going to happen. It has happened. And I actually have a couple of questions about how the town views a couple of issues. I apologize, I have not read the new master plan. I probably should, and maybe the answers to my questions are in the master plan. One of the big changes that's been happening out there, and Steve alluded to it with all of us getting older and younger people not being here. In the old days, when a large company set up shop in town, their employees moved to the town and lived there. That doesn't necessarily happen anymore for a lot of different reasons. But you've got some large companies in town, and I'm thinking specifically of BAE and Intel, who need engineers. They need young engineers to replace the engineers that are retiring. Where do they get those engineers? Well, in New Hampshire, we have a huge issue right now of being able to find employees. Most businesses I talk to tell me that they're having a hard time finding employees. So unemployment is not the major issue that we have. It's lack of talent, and it's primarily lack of young professional talent. So how does BAE and Intel and Merrimack and several other companies in the area, how do they get the young talent here? I had an interesting conversation a couple months ago with a manager of Texas Instruments up in Manchester, and he was telling me that he hires a bunch of mechanical engineers out of MIT. They don't want to move to New Hampshire. They don't want to move to Manchester. They like living in Cambridge and Boston. So for 2 years, they drive up to Manchester. And every day, the drive gets more difficult. And they finally decide, I'm not going to do this anymore. So he's got a turning wheel of these young engineers coming up here. He said to me, the answer for him, or part of the answer for him, is rail. I had never thought about rail as a way of bringing talent to New Hampshire. I always thought of rail as a way for people in New Hampshire to get to Boston. That was an aha moment for me. And as I think about BAE and Intel and Merrimack, I start to think about rail. So one of my questions is whether, how the town feels about the rail line. As you may know, there's a proposal, a concept of rail coming up through Nashua, going to Manchester, maybe to Concord, and having a stop in Bedford, right over the line. That could provide a pipeline for the kind of young talent that is needed to keep businesses like BAE and Intel in a town like Merrimack. I'm not here as a spokesman for any group in favor of or opposed to rail. I'm just raising the question. And the other question I wanted to ask about was a resource that runs through Merrimack. In fact, it's got the same name as the town. It's the Merrimack River. As I travel around towns in New England, the towns that seem to be the most successful are the ones that take advantage of the water resource. Portland, Burlington, Providence. Even Manchester doesn't take advantage of the Merrimack River. There's not one single restaurant on the Merrimack River in Manchester. How can that be? Access to the river can be the difficulty for development, but how does the town view that resource? Because if you can get those people, those young people, to come up here and work via rail, eventually they're going to get tired of taking the train every day. They're going to want to raise a family, and they're going to realize that Merrimack is a great place to live. And to me, that river is a maximum amenity, a great resource for people to take advantage of. So, sorry for the rambling, but I'm just curious about how the town views those two issues.
Well, you did answer your question. If you do take a look at the master plan, you will find it there. But generally speaking, yes, particularly with the question about reclaiming and getting back to the river, there are significant sections of the master plan, both in the natural resources section as well as the land use chapters, that talk about how do we really get back to taking advantage of the Merrimack River as both a community amenity and a resource for the community. In terms of the rail, there is a representative from our town council as part of the New Hampshire Rail Transit Authority who's very much involved. And our master plan, while it does not take any specific position politically on the subject, certainly does take into account that there are opportunities to be achieved with the access of rail coming through Merrimack and being a potential very important part of our economic development future.
Dick, there's one thing I'd like to add to the component of Dan's question and Tim's response regarding rivers and the amenity they create. Is we're fortunate enough here in town to have two rivers. The Sauhegan River has confluence with the Merrimack River, not very far from where we are now. Opportunity that was created for the town not too many years ago when they tore down the Green Monster across from Buckley's restaurant, and the Watson family donated the land to the town for a park. Things are slow in happening. They always are. But the linkages that are being created between that and the trail system that will take people to the other side of the turnpike and the other side of the river. We took advantage as a community a few years ago when the DOT was reconstructing the Merrill's Marauders Bridge, and our former town manager did what people joke about, and you buy a bridge. You want to buy a bridge, Dan? We bought a bridge and we installed it so that that linkage of the trail system and a network can go to the other side, and the significant trail network that exists on the west side of the turnpike and the south side of the Sauhegan River. More importantly, with the node in that is Watson Park and the work of the Town Center Committee that's been ongoing, and the vision that is also contained in the master plan about developing a cohesive town center. I have a vision that before I'm done, I'd like to see a lot of redevelopment happen in the core to actually create a true town center that is built around and linked to, in a pedestrian-friendly manner, the amenities created by the park and the necklace of trails that go along the river. So we'll see how that plays out. But one of the things that, with the panel that's in front of you today, with those in community development, building, and then the land use boards, is that they make an effort and have made an effort. I helped Buckley's get established there. And when the prior restaurant was there, they didn't have seating upstairs. Without building any more parking, we got dispensation necessary to make it work. And obviously that has been a very favorable outcome compared to what that building looked like 7-8 years ago before Mike Buckley bought it. It was not an asset to the community. It now is. Probably the best restaurant in town. Like to see more of that.
Thank you, Steve. Bob.
Thank you, Dick, and thank you, Dan, for the question. I want to echo the things that Tim had said about the master plan and some of the things that are in there. One of the interesting pieces about both the river and the rail in Merrimack, and it's kind of common throughout New England, is that railroads historically were always built near the rivers. And that presents an interesting planning kind of a concept where you want to take advantage of both of these things together. One of those things, and this brings me to sort of my own personal view of the rail. I can't speak for the planning board on it because I haven't made any decisions on it, but if there was rail available, I'd ride it to work every day. I work in Concord, and it would save me the gas and the ride and all that stuff. I would love it. I love the commuting aspect of the rail. But the thing that you got to guard against is what you see in rail beds in inner cities where everything that faces the rail is fenced off and boarded up. It's the collection of old tires and broken bottles and overgrown weeds and the horrific gash in the landscape that occurs in a lot of places where commuter rail exists. So you got to be able to accomplish the commuter benefits of it without falling prey to letting it be aesthetically as bad as it is in some of the older cities and some of the inner cities. Now, we're not an inner city, so I don't know that that's an immediate effect. But if you want to develop the riverfront right next to the rail, you've got to figure out how to manage the aesthetics of both of those things together. And there's definitely a planning tension between the two of them, an important thing to consider. What I'd also like to comment on, Dan, though, is what you talk about with attracting young talent, young engineers to places. I've had a chance to do a little bit of reading on some subjects that relate to business development, community development, and that sort of thing. And one of the trends that's changed historically, when young people graduate college and they decide what to do next, historically, students, graduates sought their job. And they decided where they wanted to work or what company they wanted to work for. And then they went and lived in Seattle because that's where Boeing is, or they went and lived in Silicon Valley because that's where those companies are. That trend has reversed itself. The majority of graduates now pick their place first and then look for a job. What does that mean for companies? You need a town that attracts the people that you want to hire because that's how you pick your place where you're going to come as a business. The dynamic has reversed, and the communities have to think about, how do I attract the young people? What do young people want? Well, the book that I was reading had promoted the idea that young people want more compact development, more walkable communities, restaurants, entertainment, transportation, shopping options that don't necessarily focus on long commutes and long drives. Whether that book is right or not, who knows? But that becomes a piece of the puzzle. How do you get the folks that want to live in Cambridge? What is it about Cambridge that attracts them? I imagine it's a lot of those things. It's a walkable community. It's very compact. There's a lot of restaurants and nightlife and entertainment and theater and all of those things not that far away. It's a vibrant community. So how do you do that here? Well, we're never going to be Manhattan. We're never going to have that kind of density. But a commuter option like the rail that leads to Manchester, where there's a few more restaurants and the river and the things going on there, or leads you down to Boston. And so it's easy to get from here to there. And then, obviously, Merrimack's got a lot to brag about in its own right with restaurants and attractions and parks and quality of life. So All of that stuff matters. That comes back to what I started talking about before with the introduction and master planning, figuring out how do all these pieces fit together. When you sit and hear in a town say, we want to target light industrial. Every small town says we want to target light industrial because it's a big taxpayer, low use on resources. Everybody wants to have some of that stuff. And they figure, well, let's advertise, or let's and a sales pitch is not what it's about. It's about a community. You got to have all of those pieces together, and that's what I think Merrimack does really well, is figure out how all of those things fit together, not just a pitch that says, hey, we'll give you a tax break if you open up over here. It's the community with the people and the culture and everything else that you want.
Thank you, Bob. So now we have the community, and someone has moved here, and they want to put a deck on the side of their home, Fran. Can you kind of guide us through what the...
Would that be on Ichabod Lane?
No, I have one. Can you guide us through what the process would be for that? They have to be so many feet as a side setback, front
Yeah,
rear
well,
setback,
I'm not going to
and all
quote so many feet. First of all, they've got to go to community development.
Okay.
And speak to Tim's people.
As well as Mike's folks over at building as well.
And they fill out the form, diagrams. And community development, like I said, is our support team. And they send out notices to the abutters that this hearing is going to take place. And the people come in whether they have, they present it themselves, or they can have an engineer or someone. Right, Steve? You're welcome. Present it for them. A lot of times we see a hand-drawn diagram. It's nothing fancy. It's just to let us know what they want and how far away from the property it is. And they give us the reasons, and if the abutters have no problem, we basically vote in the affirmative, and they get their variance and have their porch half a foot away from the other person's property line.
Just to clear up on that, though, if they meet the regulations
they meet the regulations
setbacks and all that, they bypass zoning board, and they go in front of Tim and Mike. And
generally speaking, if you're talking about a deck or a building addition, 9 times out of 10, you're probably going to start with the building division over at fire department, because if it's a house that's already built, you're really not going to need to see me unless you're looking to subdivide the home, or if you have an issue with the regulatory requirements that would require me to then send you to the zoning board. But I'd say probably 85 to 90% of the time, it's just going to be a matter of handling the permitting process through the building division.
Good. Thank you.
And basically
Mike?
what we do is, and this happens daily basis, we have multiple people coming in just on the concept, do they want to put an addition on their house, addition on a business, add a deck, and we have the files. So we're able to immediately pull the files at the front desk, guide the person who wants to make the change in the proper direction. What we need to do, they give us an idea of where they're going to place this new structure they're putting in, and we can calculate if it's in the setbacks, this is what you have to do. If it falls out of the setbacks, then these are your next steps. A lot of times we've had people change the design of their decks to make sure they stay within the setbacks, and it goes very quickly. Within the same day a permit is issued. Within 2 days they usually have a contractor out there because they've already talked to a contractor. Inspections are done for the foundations, the deck through, and within weeks, maybe a month, they're enjoying a barbecue on their deck.
Cool.
So, Dick, if it basically falls within town codes, we don't see anything at all. It's only if it's out of the ordinary.
And the important thing to remember about the zoning board is the zoning board really, out of everybody that's up here on this panel, has the most narrow set of rules and responsibilities of any of us up here. Zoning boards are really set up under state law to deal with things that A, don't comply with those local zoning ordinance, or B, are items that are permitted by the ordinance as long as specific criteria within that ordinance are met. Those are really the only couple of things besides dealing with administrative appeals of decision and things of that nature. So their set of criteria and the structure for which the zoning board works is very limited to those things that are required by state law. So the zoning board, while it plays an completely important role within the fabric of the development of the community, they don't quite have the same role and responsibility that the other boards do and the other departments here in town, because the state law is very specific with the zoning boards because of their quasi-judicial nature. They're essentially allowing you to break the law, so they have to be very careful and limited in their application of the requirements.
Good, thank you. Do we have another question out there? Oh, yes, please.
Thank you. I think I should probably introduce myself first, since most everybody here doesn't know me. I'm Tracy Pord. I'm a chairperson of a company called Quali Incorporated, and we own a group of companies that we're bringing back into New Hampshire. My background is that I actually was raised in New Hampshire and decided to go adventure and explore and find out more about business and do international work and then come back and build companies. So that's what I'm here for. And I'm sorry I haven't met everybody here yet, but I'm sure that will happen. But I wanted to kind of dovetail on some of the things that were brought up by our local entrepreneur from Bob and from other people about a type of work that's coming towards New Hampshire. And I'll give some background on that. A lot of young people that I talk to around the country and internationally, people that I've worked with for years, look at New Hampshire and they look at us for a quality of life that isn't found everywhere. They know that they can work almost anywhere in the world now because they can work by VPN or by email or by some other format. And I'm not in any way diminishing the physical nature of what we do here business-wise. I have an engineering firm, so I know very much about the physical world. But I also look at the people who want to come to New Hampshire and they say, I want to be there because this is where I want to raise my family. I want to be there because this is where I want my roots to be. I want to be there because I have a sense of safety. Thank you, Chief Doyle. I want to be there because the natural resources are something that I want to spend time in. I want to be there because I find the entertainment that I need. I want to be there because I have a quality of life that at the end of my life I'll be able to say, I'm glad I was here. Now I say that because with another frame in mind, being someone who's built companies and sold them and run other people's companies. So I have both sides of the perspective. I think Merrimack, and I say this from an unbiased point of view some ways, I think Merrimack is expertly positioned to take the attention and the resources and the economic drive of an engine that the U.S. is looking for. So I come back here and I look at what we can do and I look at what we can bring to this area, and I talk to people who say to me, why would you choose Merrimack? And I said, because they have the resources, because they have the people who are sitting behind this counter who are saying, we'll make it work, we'll figure it out. We have the resources, we have the ability. But I also want to say, keep an eye on the people who are in their teens and 20s who are saying, oh, I live over in Illinois, but I'm looking at Merrimack, New Hampshire, because I want to live there. Because it's happening. It's happening on our internets. It's happening internationally. It's happening everywhere. And those are the people that we can draw here who say, I can start a company, I can start a brewery. I can start a tech company. I can start an economics company. I can start a statistics company. I can start any company I want, because nothing's holding us back. So the rest of it, and I don't mean this with any bad way, I tend to be a visionary in the industries that I work in. I have people who tap into me from years before who ask me to help in an industry. I look at this area and I say, 10, 20 years from now, we have a thriving community of young people who are saying, this is one of the best places to live. This is the Cambridge of New Hampshire. Why? Because we have people here who have a quality of life that they want to have, and they bring work with them. I also want to say, keep an eye on the fact that remote-wise, you could have people here who live in Merrimack who work in Germany, who work in Russia, who work, four of my team members right now work in Israel. 2 of them work in China. But we're based here in New Hampshire. So it's a global community. The way that we do work has changed. The way that we have our relationships in business have changed. Physically, we have to respond to what we need to make that happen. but physically responding to that isn't difficult. We have the minds, we have the ability, we have the people, we have the drive. And I think that's the biggest thing that Merrimack brings is we have the drive. I hear from all of you and everyone. What can I do to help you? What do you need? What's important here? I think one of the most exciting things about Merrimack is that you have people who have been here for years who have done a lot, and you have people who are looking at Merrimack saying, I want to start my business there in 2 years, and I'm 17 years old. Cool. Okay, how are we going to bring those worlds together? And honestly, and I speak with myself in front of that, we don't always manage that perfectly, but we manage it. And I think that's the part that's important. So I wanted to, that's kind of dovetailing particularly off of what Bob said, but I wanted to bring it up to everybody here because there are conversations coming in that aren't necessarily visible. And I want us to stay on top of that. So do we have the talent? Can we draw the talent? Absolutely. Do we have the schooling and the process and the pipelines for everything we need? Not yet. But do we have the ability to do it? Yeah. We just have to keep communicating about it. But most importantly, when you look at our community, when I drive down the street, when people say, why are you here? Why are you taking me down Merrimack? I'm like, I want you to see why we live here. I want you to see why we have people who come here. Because in 5 to 10 years, this is going to be an even more vibrant community. So look at economic opportunity as something that drives people to a place they want to be. Because that'll build Merrimack. Thanks.
Thank you. There's a lot of kind words in there. Thank you very much.
There was. I think we have another speaker, too.
Actually, that's a great lead-in. Thank you so much. You've told us all the great things you're doing, all the things that are going on, and I know them. I've been here a couple of weeks. What I'd like to know is what are the top 3 things that you want to see improved over the next 3 to 5 years? And you've got a bunch of committees out there and public advocates. You've got townsfolk involved in a lot of boards. What is it that you would like to see done that might be a little bit different than what it is today?
I guess if I don't mind, I'll start with that. I'm sure there's other people who have similar visions, or maybe different visions. But from my perspective, I said in my opening remarks about keeping our homegrown talent here and what it's going to take to do that. When I first moved to New Hampshire back in 1984, I moved here from Burlington, Vermont. And the first thing I noticed was people in New Hampshire don't have 3 places in their life. They have 2, where they work, go to school, and where they live. The place in between was, for most people, was kind of a scant situation. The young people today want that 3rd place, and they want the interaction and the culture. They demand culture. I would like to see us take advantage of our positioning to do things that expand culture and create opportunity for the 3rd place. Restaurants, pubs, breweries, but places to seek entertainment as well. Over in a nearby town, they have Tupelo Music Hall. I'd love to see something like that here. I'd like to see restaurants that take advantage of farm to table. We live very close to a place where an awful lot of good food is produced. I'd like to see more of that. So those are my thoughts about moving forward in the future.
Thank you, Steve. Mark, thoughts?
Actually, I do. I think just to hinge or maybe iterate a little bit of what Steve was talking about, the challenge associated with the young folks now, and some of the challenges we're seeing is not only attracting them to town and either working in government or working in private enterprise, but retaining those individuals as well is certainly something that I see as a visionary challenge down the road. Folks nowadays want a lot of opportunity. They want to be able to take advantage of all the skills that they come to the table with. And if we're not in a position to be able to leverage that, meaning give them the opportunities that they need, we run the risk of certainly losing them to other competitors. So I think it's a matter of maybe taking a two-tiered approach, finding out what it is that will attract them to the area, whether it's the dynamic of the community, whether it's the opportunities to provide them employment, or the culture that we've created here to the sense that we improve their quality of life, or the opportunities for quality of life. But also, what is it we can do collectively to give them that edge so that they see Merrimack as a place that they want to stay, that the loyalty is not only built with their employer, but the loyalty becomes built in with them and the community that now that they're living in, that they're bringing their children up in, where they're going to school and the like. I mean, that's a big part of making sure that the community continues to thrive. So do we offer them volunteer opportunities on boards? How do we get them energized to be able to step up to the plate a little bit more and find out what can they do to continue to make sure that the community of Merrimack is someplace that they want to continue to bring up their kids, or even have their kids live and bring up their own families. And I see that as one of our biggest challenges.
Well,
thank you, Dick. I certainly echo the things that have already been said, and I could probably list a lot of different things as the chairman of the planning board that comes across my view screen there as things to do. But I want to pick a little bit of a narrow one, a little bit one maybe not so much on the top of everybody's mind, but looking out the window over your shoulder is our public library. Libraries are a real interesting part of communities. They're really at a strange turning point in their development. I mean, a building full of books, which is what they've always been, probably isn't where it's at in the future for them. Merrimack has had a few opportunities to propose redevelopment of libraries, and it hasn't gotten the votes necessary to do that. But figuring out and seeing, well, what does this library become when in its next generation? Does it redesign what a library is for a community? Because it's at that turning point in the progression of that culture to be something different than it always has been, because the internet is and e-readers and all of those things are kind of pushing the books a little bit out of the focus. And is it a community center? Does it have a musical component? Does it have a coffee shop component? Is it a gathering place? What is it that you can do with this? And I don't know what the answer is. I don't have an answer. But I think over the next 5 or 10 years, if something really cool happened with the development of our library that sort of redesigned what a library is in a small community, I think that'd be a really neat accomplishment.
Cool.
A little bit narrow, but
thank you. Are there any more questions from the audience? Carl. Everybody hates to come to the mic.
We talk a lot about culture and bringing people here, and trying to find a way to, encourage commerce. I think that the biggest focus, it's not what do we want our culture to be. Let's, because we all have a different idea of what a culture is. For me, it just starts with conversing. People like to connect with each other, and it's about having venues in which you can do that and having a population that's interested in that. So I mean, a brewery works out really well because people converse and collaborate over beer. They also do it over coffee and at theaters. And there's really no right or wrong way to say how are we going to develop the culture, or looking at a culture and saying that's what we want to be. I think if we focus on a venue like this, we're trying to educate the market as to why Merrimack is a great place to open their business. If we focus on attracting them, then inherently a second order effect is going to be a culture will start to develop. I'm sure nobody sitting up here on this panel said, hey, we need to focus on attracting a second brewery in Merrimack and have like a West Coast style pre-prohibition brewery. That would really bring in culture. But it was, they took the step of, starting with Tim, trying to make it as easy and approachable as possible just to be able to come in and ask questions. And that was one of the easiest, it made it an easy decision to come to Merrimack. I think focusing on those things, making it as easy as possible to attract entrepreneurs, whether they're somewhere within state or from Illinois or Idaho or New Mexico. For me, I moved from El Paso, Texas. So bringing people here and making it as easy as possible so that entrepreneurs can focus on what it is they do best, which is what they want to open their business for, and making the whole paperwork, permits, the whole process from start to finish, making that as easy as possible. I think that's inherently will draw exactly what we want. So, that's probably one of my favorite things about the town of Merrimack, and I really appreciate it, Tim. So, yeah, I guess that's where I was going with.
Thank you, Carl. While Chris is walking over to the mic, as he has something to bring forward, Tim, the new upgraded website that you talked about earlier that is on the horizon, will that do all of the things that Carl just articulated for us?
It probably won't initially. One of the things that I had actually put out an RFP earlier in the year, because one of the things I had talked about when I was hired here in Merrimack was expanding our presence with a state-of-the-art economic development website. My vision initially for that was for it to be completely separate from the town's website. In looking at and evaluating some of the communities that have done that, they're not as successful as they were initially all geared up and promised they were going to be. And what I've seen is a lot of communities are retrenching and going back to making sure that everything is within the municipal website. So I have funding that I have had in my budget and have carried over for a couple of years that was originally slated for a separate website that I'm going to now be able to work with our current website vendor that's working for the town in general, is to say, well, let's get the overall website project done first, and then how can we make work with what I have available, the types of functionality that I wanted to see separately work within the infrastructure of the town's website. So I would expect that will probably happen within 9 to 12 months after the complete revamp of the town's website is completed.
Cool. Thank you. Chris. Carl, did you have a follow-up?
I was going to say, I think it's a two-pronged attack. Websites, and that's obviously, Londonderry, that's a very impressive thriving Londonderry website. Not anymore.
Tim took it with him.
I think it's also the businesses that are here. Yes. One of the main reasons why I'm here at the brewery is because I think it's important that if we have a good experience working with the town of Merrimack, the way that we pay you guys back for doing a great job is telling everybody.
Yes.
That's something that we communicate to people all the time. People come and ask us, I'm from Washington, D.C. originally, and Mike is from San Diego. And why are we in New Hampshire with this brewery? Well, it's because Merrimack's pretty awesome. So I think it's a two-pronged approach. So when you get your website up, I'd love to.
Absolutely.
It's one thing when you're the salesman to an entrepreneur. Yeah, my town's so great. That's what every economic development dude is saying up and down the Merrimack River. But if I can come to the table and say, yeah, I've actually been there and done it.
Exactly.
It's really awesome. That referral, I think, goes a long way. So.
And it kind of gets, I didn't have a chance to answer Dick Barry's question about the types of goals and things that I see as challenges moving forward. But one of the things that we've started, but I don't think we've done enough of yet, I think there's a misperception in the economic development world that the job of the person in economic development is to go out and get that big company to come move to your community. That's not what it is. 90 to 95% of the economic development and growth in this community is going to come from within. It's nurturing the businesses we already have here in the community and making sure that they can thrive and expand here locally. That's where our focus needs to be, and I need to continue to improve those communications and the communication between the business community and the municipality, between myself, the town manager, to make sure that those lines of communication are open so that then when they're ready to make that move or to make that expansion plan, we're all on the same page moving forward and we can get there successfully.
Good. Thank you, Tim. This young lady here, Chris, before, she wanted to add something to what Carl just said, or are you good?
I can actually speak loud enough if everybody can hear me. Okay.
Yeah, do the microphone because the folks that are on TV cannot.
We want to replay this many times.
Running him out of his seat. Anyways, thank you. Thank you for your help on that. I was thinking about the website actually piece, and a lot of website development doesn't address the fact that user interface isn't seen when you're developing it. In other words, when it's developed, people use it like alpha users or beta users. If you have a user group that has nothing to do with Merrimack, and just say, give us this feedback. Give me 15 people who tag this who say, I can't find this, or this makes no sense to me, or I'm lost on that. Because the majority of the time when I send people to the Merrimack website, I'll say, there's something on the website, and they go, I can't find it, and I'm like, okay. So it's a user issue from the sense of being the blind person, I don't mean blind, but the person who's never been here before. So if you pick up a group of people who are neutral completely, that might help you.
I'd like to add a little bit too, Dick, before... Oh, go ahead. I'll add it later. Please. I'll talk more later.
Thank you. I'm Chris Christensen. I'm here thinking today as the chairman of the Parks and Recreation Committee, and you've alluded to some of the things that we present, but as Tim says, I'm expecting this to be played many, many times, either through the website or shipping out a CD or whatever. So I do want to point out that within a couple hundred yards of Town Hall, we have 3 major parks. We have 2 major parks with lake frontage and 1,000 acres or more of conservation land. We do everything from hiking to hunting, programs for youngsters and senior citizens and everybody in between. End of commercial. The question I have is, or the sense of direction I'm curious about, is tomorrow, November 1st, is a momentous day in Merrimack. We're tearing down the toll booth at exit 12. Thank you to the legislature. That's opening up that end of town more than it has ever been. You can get from the Massachusetts border up to exit 12. From there, in 6 minutes, you can be at the airport. There's some undeveloped land in that area, industrial zoned, and I'd like to hear how you think that land is going to be developed, how the traffic patterns are going to develop in the area of exit 12. Are we seeing a lot more traffic? Is it whatever your thoughts might be, and I think it probably impacts almost all of you. So that's the question.
I'll let Bob lead off on that because we do have a current project with
Sure.
that major piece of land there right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Chris, for the question. The land that Chris is talking about is right past the homestead where there's the large field, and there's been a sign up for the Flatley company that it was for sale for a while. And that parcel of property actually wraps completely around the St. Gobain Plastic Company all the way to the utility right-of-way that's north of that. I don't know how many acres it is. They've 150? They've come forward and they've proposed a conditional use permit, which is a special kind of approval that the planning board does for a master planned site. So the single site is master planned rather than just saying we want to build apartments here or we want to build a Walmart here. And by master planning it, the architecture looks similar, the things interconnect, they look like they belong there. But conditional use permits are also multi-use. And so you have residential component. There'll be, I don't know, something like 200 apartments that are built back there. And I don't know how many square feet, but probably 30 or so commercial sites, retail sites. One large retail pad is available, and I don't know whether that will continue to be part of their plan. There's also warehousing and things back there. And so that site has got a proposal for its development that will affect traffic. I think it is coming forward because of the toll situation at exit 12. I wish exit 12 would go north and south, because one of the things that's really kind of unique about the turnpike is there's not really that many places that you can get off an exit, have lunch, fill up with gas, and continue on your way. And exit 12 is only for turning around. You get off there, you got to go back south, or else go up or down DW Highway to get to a better exit. So it does limit the options there. But there are some more parcels that go up there that have access to the airport access road, Ray Wazork Drive. And I think that there will be some continued, so there has to be some focus on how that traffic impacts DW Highway. Planning board projects come forward. Traffic studies are a big part of everything that they do, where they've got to talk about what's the impact and what's this going to do for folks. It's already changed commuting traffic. The traffic to get down to exit to Bedford Road, down DW Highway, is increasing in the morning because people can now get on there rather than going north to the airport access road to get south to go to Boston. So already has that impact on things. I think it's a great opportunity for things that are multimodal, airport related, rail related, highway related, getting those three things to work together. From a planning board standpoint, it's not so much about picking a use and saying, oh, we really want Borders to come build a bookstore here, or we really want Whole Foods to come build a grocery store here, as much as it is about building the regulatory environment to encourage the kinds of uses that you think might go there. But it's private property ultimately, and private property owner is really the one that dictates what they'd like to do on their property. So we try to create the environment that makes it workable and goes forward. Before I finish, though, I do want to add a little bit on what Carl was saying before, and although websites are important to the development, the magic, I think, of Merrimack and small towns, I lived in New Orleans, I grew up in Miami. Big cities are impersonal. They're website-driven. They're bureaucracies. They're nameless and faceless. And there's such a difference. And what I love about Merrimack is if you got something, you can go see a guy named Tim, and here's his number, and tell him I sent you. And go see Chief Currier, and he knows because he helped me with my the project that I had. Or Steve's a good guy, or Fran, or Chief Doyle. And everybody knows each other. And there's that community, that real, not so much log on to a website and respond to their survey, but go see the guy. Go talk to him. They'll meet with you. And that is really special in a town this size. Some bigger towns really don't have the ability to do that anymore, not because they don't want to, but just because of logistics. And it's just a fantastic part about Merrimack.
Great. Thank you, Bob. Mark?
And just to piggyback on what Chris's question was and a little bit about what Bob spoke about, when it comes to those kinds of larger projects, we sit down because Tim and his group send them over to us. We sit down with those developers and talk with them about the impact it's going to have on public safety services in that particular area, whether it's traffic related or whether it's calls for service related. We have that conversation to let those folks know that conceptually their plan is this. What is it going to have for requirements in terms of public safety response if necessary? And I know Chief Currier has done the exact same thing. We work very closely with those developers so they know going in what the potential impacts are initially. And then as the plan gets tweaked or even gets closer to fruition, we work with them to make sure that we are ready going into and stepping through the door, that we are ready to handle any adverse impacts in terms of calls for service or traffic, such as we did with the mall when the mall came into town. There were a lot of concerns relative to the impact on our calls for service, our response times, whether we're going to be able to handle it, and whether the traffic was going to be in such a manner that we were going to have real issues with developmental neighborhoods in the area and whatnot. We work very closely with the property developer to make sure that those concerns were heard and that they understood and felt comfortable that we were ready to address them if in the event that they came to fruition.
Good, thank you. We need to wrap this up in about 2 minutes, but Mike, would you like to add anything to that?
We talk about, what the fire department offers here and what emergency service offers. I have twofold, okay? Well, actually, multiple folds. But trying to break that up in two areas. We have to keep track of the emergency services and how it's going to affect this community and understand when we grow and we build, those demands on that services are going to continue, and that is a piece that we can't forget, okay? That emergency service. You can't forget that as the community grows, that has to proceed along with the community. The other aspect that I look at is that when we look at everything that's approved and we plan it, it turns to my team to actually build it with the contractor. Look at the insides of what they want and how can they make that work with the state codes, the fire codes, the building codes, and make it safe for the community. Okay, so, and that includes trying to develop access around the building in the event of an emergency. What some people forget, and we look at the fire department and police department, we're here to provide that emergency service when you need it now. Okay, and sometimes that gets tough when we have multiple calls. The police officer on patrol is out there looking for things to happen. The firefighter and EMTs at the station, they're no different than on patrol. They're ready for that next call. What people don't understand, and this was quoted to me by an ATF agent in one of the programs I sat through, he looked at me and he says, I got to give it to the fire department and the emergency services, because they've done statistics that between 85 and 90% of the fire calls that are happening right now. They're not already happening, gonna happen, we found it. He said they're happening right now. When somebody's having a heart attack, emergency services has to go now. When somebody has a motor vehicle accident, they have to go now. It's happening now. We can't plan it. When there's a house fire, it's happening now. Right. So as we look out into the community and as we build this community, I heard a lot of people say we want to have a safe community. They want safety. The fire service here in Merrimack, the police service here, hey, that's why we are on our ratings. That's why we have such advanced tools in cardiac care and equipment on our ambulances where I have records and documentations from the time that Mark's dispatch tones my ambulance to a heart attack. We've left the station, got on the scene, packaged, treated the patient, transported, got into the hospital, got into the cath lab. The balloon has been put in between 35 and 40 minutes. That is amazing, and people don't understand. That's amazing.
Right.
Okay, and we're able to do that because we communicate, police, fire communicate, and we work with the community to say, hey, we need this safety, we need this access, we need you to build it this way because we're here to protect you and everybody that comes visits you. And that's something that I'm not sure every community can say.
Right. Thank you, Chief. We appreciate that. Well, at this time, I need to wrap it up. I want to thank the panel for your time today. I think it was very enlightening to all of us. This is going to be the first of more to come. Also like to thank the audience for coming here today as well. I hope it was productive and meaningful for you. And mostly I'd like to thank our rock star executive director, Deb Quartermash, who this was her brainchild, and she put through the whole thing, the process, and so we thank you for that. And let me introduce Deb again.
Thank you so much, everyone. I know we're a little over time, and I apologize for that. I just wanted to say a couple thank yous myself. I'll be very, very brief. I want to thank the panel for all of your stories today and all of you sharing the hard work of your departments and boards. I think I've learned quite a lot today, and you guys are all part of why Merrimack is such a thriving, safe, nurturing community that I'm proud to live in. I guess I'm kind of a short timer. It's only been 20 years. So, but it's been 20 years, raising my children and everything. So thank you for all of your hard work. Thank you to all of our guests and all the attendees today for sharing your stories. I think this was a tremendous success. I do want to respond on behalf of the Chamber to the question of attracting young people to the area. Carl is aware of this. We actually have met with Stay Work Play New Hampshire, and the Merrimack Chamber is the 13th officially sanctioned young professional network that we're going to be launching. We've named it PACE, so stay tuned for information on that. We're meeting next week, I guess. But we are doing our part as well as the Chamber to attract young professionals. So thank you, everyone, for coming. Thank you to the stocked fridge, before I forget, for the wonderful breakfast items. And we're going to be doing a feedback survey. If you are viewing this and not here, please call the Chamber office, call any of these folks if you have any questions or any feedback. We're hoping to do this annually. So thank you all for coming.